Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's special leadership live stream. Today, we're welcoming back a very special guest. Mod Marcos, Old School's newest executive producer. We have a few questions to ask Marcos. I apologize for Woody in the background. He's very excited by the live stream. Before that, I'm going to give everyone an opportunity just to let us know how are you getting on and what have you been up to. So if you can kick us off, please, Kieran.
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. It feels like it's non-stop busy, to be honest. But no, it's been an interesting week. Found what turns out to be a 4-week-old kitten in the road, in the middle of no street lights, busy 60-mile-per-hour road, and we had to rescue this kitten. So it's been an interesting week, looking after had to look after her and feed her milk because she's meant to get it from her mother and everything. So it's been an interesting ride. It's like having a baby.
Kieran,
anyway, that's a tangent. It's not what you're doing with RuneScape, but yeah.
Bless. Well, thank you for that. Hopefully everything goes well with your newfound kitten, and props to you for taking on that rescue mission. Sween, how are you today, and what have you been up to?
I'm very well, thank you. As Kieran said, it's been pretty much all go for the last few weeks. A couple of small things have popped up. Community might have seen them, I'm not sure. And Aiza, I like how you said there's no Woody appearance. Just like you said, there'll be no Woody appearance, and a minute later, he's like, "You what? I'm coming on stream."
Yeah, I know. He heard his name. I was like, I don't think so. I'm going to get my showtime.
Also, I'm in the office. Yeah, this is the studio. There is a little bit of Zarpus behind me on the pillar, and then some RS3 artwork over there. But yeah.
Oh, come on now. All right. Well,
yeah.
I guess that leaves us with Mod Marcos. So I'll start off with the same question, Marcos. How are you doing today, and what have you been up to? And I've got some very specific questions to ask after.
Cool. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Pretty busy to say the least. Obviously, I'm getting to grips with everything that's going on with the game at the moment, and kind of trying to learn as much as I can about the game, and kind of working with the team and so on. I haven't found a kitten this week, so my life is less exciting than Kieran's, I'd say.
Well, that's unfortunate, but you've got all the excitement of Old School to look forward to, I'm sure. Obviously, we mentioned very briefly that you're the new executive producer. For those that may be unaware with the kind of like game development process or just Jagex Studio in general, what exactly is it that you actually do, Marcos?
Yeah, so the exec producer is generally responsible for the whole running of the game. It's probably the best way to describe it. So both the game and the team are kind of responsible for working well and so on. My background is generally more from the production side, so that's more we're interested, but production is more like the project management specialism for within gaming. And what that means in kind of reality is that obviously I'm in quite a lot of meetings, but mostly I'm focused around like leadership of the team and making sure it's organized and so on. And my role isn't creative, it's more along those lines, and all of the creativity is kind of with the team. So they're the people driving the ideas for new content and so on.
Okay, great. So I guess the next thing to ask really is, what is your history? I mean, how long have you been at Jagex for?
I've been at Jagex for a long time, it's fair to say. So I'm a bit of a veteran at the studio. I've worked kind of pretty much in all different areas of the studio as well. So I started off like more than 10 years ago working on RuneScape. Worked on there for a few years, worked on some of the larger projects that were on RuneScape, like clans and so on. And then I even worked on quite a few projects with some of the people in the current Old School team as well back in the day. And then after that, I've kind of worked on some other games and things that the studio's been doing in the meantime. And I actually also worked on Old School for a couple of years ago. So in 2019, I was working on Old School for most of the year as well, but that was on a temporary basis. But now I'm permanently with the team.
Okay, so some experience in 2019. I mean, it wasn't that long ago now, actually. So I was going to ask you what was it like back then, but probably very similar to now. So I guess what I'll ask, probably a better question anyway, is what do you think of Old School right now, where it's headed? And maybe compared to back how it was in 19, but more focused on the current.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, like obviously compared to 19, the main difference is obviously we were all in the studio then, I guess, rather than like working remotely and so on. And I also had a bit of involvement when Old School launched, like a fairly minor involvement in terms of like I was helping, because when I first worked at Jagex, I was responsible for like the websites and editorial side of the game and so on. So when Old School launched, I was actually responsible for like sorting out the website and things like that. So I worked a bit with the team at the very beginning when the team was absolutely tiny. And the main thing that strikes me now, obviously, is that the game has just grown so much. Like it's become kind of incredibly popular, and the team's bigger and the community's bigger. The releases are bigger, they're more complicated. And the other thing that's also been interesting, kind of watching generally old school from a distance, is kind of I find it personally quite interesting. Kind of like it's quite a pioneering game. I think that the way that the game works with the community is quite like quite unique and ahead of the curve almost. It's quite one of the at the forefront of the industry, I'd say almost. And the other thing also is just the fact that it was at the forefront in terms of like currently there's basically remasters and remakes and stuff constantly being released at the moment. It's like a very common thing. When Old School started out, 8 years ago now, then it was quite rare. Like it was quite an original thing to try and quite experimental. So it's been great. Like from personally, I'm obviously kind of very proud of kind of all the work that Jagex has done and seen Old School grow over the years.
Great, thanks for that. Fantastic.
It's awesome to have you back, Mark. That's what I would say. Like having you on the team, like it was great working with you a couple of years ago, and I think I'm excited. I'm excited to have you on the team again.
Thanks. Yeah, it's good to be back.
The chats between me and Kieran were really excited. When you were announced, we were super psyched. We really enjoyed working with you in 2019.
Cool. Excellent. I'm glad to hear. I hope I don't disappoint you.
I'm sure you'll hear about it through the streams going forward, if so. But I don't think it's going to be the case. I've heard very good things, and it's also nice to have someone coming in who has got experience both with Old School and Jagex and a long history. So hopeful that a lot of the good work that you've done in the past can translate over to Old School as well. We do have some announcements that we just want to quickly go through. And first and foremost, I'll just let everyone know that obviously this is a leadership live stream, so the format's a little bit different from our standard Q&A. We're not really taking many questions from the chat. If there's an opportunity towards the end of the stream, we'll absolutely go over them. But we do have some topics that we've already selected that we want to be going over. We feel like those are kind of like big hitting things at the moment, the hottest topics out there in the community that we can delve into a little bit. So apologies if you've got a load of questions and burning desires, but we won't be able to meet those demands. First up is !GroupIronman. So the GroupIronman poll has now concluded, and we are delighted to announce that GroupIronman has passed. One of our highest, or I think it is actually our highest voted poll to date, with over 150,000 players rallying together in order to get that victory. It will be coming on October the 6th. So we do really look forward to you all getting ready with your team and your friends for a fantastic adventure through Gillinor. If you haven't already, check out the poll results summary blog to find out exactly how the results played out, and all the information you can find is within !GroupIronman. Now the next thing is talking about this week's game update, !Game Update for that. And we are happy to say that the start of the wilderness changes has begun. Has been highly anticipated, and whilst we've not been able to deliver everything immediately, there is a little section in there that kind of talks about that, and it is something that we'll go into during this stream. But yeah, some of the changes are out. It wraps up the end of the equipment rebalance changes, so the Dragonhide, Din's Bulwark. And obviously, as I mentioned, we have seen the feedback regarding the speed of these updates coming out, but we do want to assure you that there are more changes on the way, and we do apologize that this has taken longer than expected. Check out the news post. It goes into a little bit more detail, and stay tuned for a little bit more of an explanation. Something that's really exciting, just been released 1 hour and literally an hour ago now, Leagues 3. Obviously, Leagues is returning, Shattered Relics being the name, which is set to be the most open and versatile league yet. So go ahead, master the new relic system, discover different powers, and tailor them to your playstyle. You can actually see what rewards are on offer in our latest poll blog with Leagues 3. And with that being said, we actually have some images that we can throw up on screen. We did put them in last minute because the vlog went last minute, so apologies for the formatting. I know our production team probably aren't very happy with me on that one, but it is what it is. Here we can see the Void Knight Armor and the Elite Void Knight Armor kind of like ornament kits that will be coming out, which I think look absolutely fantastic. Seen some interesting comments regarding those. We're seeing all your feedback. Obviously, we're going to take all that to the team and any changes that need to be made and so on and so forth. But that's that. If we go to the next image.
I think just generally, I love the color scheme, especially on the Void Knight, which when you see the Void icon, the Void symbol rather, and that kind of blue, and then seeing that blue as well, looks awesome. I think that's one thing we've done really well with leagues, is each league's had kind of this real color attributed to it.
Yeah, the artists have really gone all out to stay true to the Shattered Relics theme that is going on. There's a whole load of story to unveil when you head into the actual league, which launches on November 3rd, which you'll have an opportunity to understand exactly why the color schemes and such have been chosen. What you're seeing now is the standard league's banner, that we get from the last few leagues. So we're continuing that tradition over. It can be held in your hand, or you can park it in your player and house if you prefer. And go to the next one. And we can just skim through a few of these. This is basically the concept art for a new cannon ornament kit. This is the first image that we have of that. And then you've seen a little bit more detail coming out with the color schemes and the kind of like flame, the floating wisp that I think is an amazing addition to it. And then again, just fleshed out a little bit more. I believe the next one after this is actually going to be what it looks like in-game, which is something that Mod West has been working on. So it looks a little bit wide because we've stretched it out. It's definitely not that wide in-game.
It's pretty cool, this.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. It's obviously very different from the current Dwarven multi-cannon that you're able to get access to, but I think that's the whole point, right? You still can identify it as a cannon, but yeah, it looks awesome.
I'd also encourage people to Google RuneScape Classic Dwarf Cannon, because I know some people are saying, "Oh my god, it looks like RS3," but actually, the inspiration from it came from RuneScape Classic. So give it a little look. And I do enjoy the people in the chat saying it's going to make the Falador riots a bit more interesting, seeing these cannons knocking around. That's your incentive to play leagues. The next time you mess up, you'll be able to have this in Falador.
Have some flashy riots to go alongside with the smite and redemption, retribution spam. And that's the cannon. We can move on to the next. We'll just skim through these quickly. Actually, we're not going to skim over this one. This is the new home teleport animation, one of my favorite things. As you get sucked into the ground below. Done.
Also, I love the little placement of the stones.
Yeah, it really is awesome. And you're gone. Big fan of this one. Okay, and the next one. This is the Mystic recolor, one of the ones that we've seen the most feedback about regarding recently in the hour that it's been posted. I know a lot of people maybe aren't a huge fan of having an extra set of Mystic robes, given the fact that they already have quite a few recolors. But it really does fit with the theming of Shattered Relics. And again, we'll be having a look through all the feedback and sending it over. And we go to the next one. And here is the Relic Hunter outfit. So again, another tradition that's followed on from previous leagues, much like the banner. There's 3 different tiers of outfit that you can unlock with varying different point costs leading up to the final set, which is on the far right. The first one on the left being the lowest tier of the equipment. And when you have this on, you can see, it matches really well with all of the rest of the pieces of gear, especially the banner. You'll see the Rune Crossbow ornament kit coming up shortly, which also matches with it, which I think is pretty awesome. And if we skip to the next one. Hey, there it is. Look at that. It's almost as if I knew what was coming up. This is the Rune Crossbow ornament kit. There's been a few people questioning why Rune Crossbow and not the Dragon Crossbow. And I think what's important to remember is that Leagues is a game mode that is open to so many different types of players at very different levels. So we wanted to make sure that the rewards kind of like correctly reflected the different types of players that will participate, and there's a little bit of something for everyone. Rune items not typically being something that you get many cosmetic versions of outside of the rune armor with the god sets instead. Makes for a nice addition. Does look a little bit mithril. I've seen that feedback too with the metal on the crossbow, but it's because it matches with the outfit. You can see it's paired up with the arm that's just poking out in the corner, but the rest of the set really just goes to show the coloring on there. And the next one. These are for the God prayer books that you can get. The prayer books themselves, functionality remains the same. There's just a new symbol, and this is concept art, so not exactly how it would show in game, not yet been developed by the art team, but to give you an idea that you'd be able to have basically one of these weapon variety packs that would unlock, cosmetic versions for all the different books that you can then mix and match for all of your favorite Fashionscape opportunities. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what players can actually pull out with all this new gear. Yeah, very excited. And then next one. Great. These are the trophies. Look a little bit different from previous trophies, more themed towards the actual relic itself, but generally going from all the different tiers all the way up until the dragon, which has a nice flame coming out of it. And again, you'll be able to store these in your player and house if you don't want to be running around Gillinor with them in your hands. And we can go to the next one. And this is just another version of the void. We can skip past this quickly. We spoke about that. And once again, and this being the last image, just goes to show this was the early concept art for the Void Knight armors. So not as it renders in game, but concept art based off in-game models where they just kind of like drew over just to see how it would feel when it's actually been developed. I believe that's all the. Yeah, it is a bit pointy on the mage helm. Yeah, I think that's all of the images that we have to show. If you haven't already, !leagues 3, and that's with the number 3, not the words. To see the blog, or just head to. Yeah, the whip image didn't make it in there. I wanted to announce it as enter the Ecto whip, but yeah, unfortunately, didn't get the opportunity to. But you can see all the rewards that are on offer in the blog that just got posted. It should be stickered at the top of the news page. So go and check it out. We are looking to hopefully poll the rewards sometime next week, depending on obviously your feedback that comes in. All right, that's all the announcements over. I get the opportunity to stop talking as much now because I'm going to throw some questions out to the fantastic guests that are joining. And first off, Marcos, I'm going to direct this one towards you, but feel free, anyone else, to join in if you feel like there's a point to. But what are your first priorities going to be when working on Old School?
Yeah, so I think the first things I want to be able to tackle is, firstly, I need to kind of listen a lot and kind of learn kind of where everything is with the community and with the team. And obviously there's been some like flare-up points recently, so I want to get a good understanding of those and what happened, try and obviously avoid those in the future. But then also one of the key things is trying to tackle some of the longer hanging kind of questions that have been hanging around for some cases since I last worked on the game. So I want to be able to tackle things, get good answers for you very shortly around things like what's happening, what we want to do with the dead man, obviously. As I know, we put out a statement the other day talking about what we were doing following the issues the other night, so we're trying to obviously resolve that as well. What we're going to be doing with a dual arena, which I realize has been like a consistent topic for the community, and then also looking at things like how we kind of like stagger the releases, because at the moment obviously we've got quite a lot of fairly big releases all released close together, and it's about whether we want to have a better cadence of more regular releases and things as well. And then also I realized again from like looking over kind of community feedback and things recently and talking to people in the team, we need to work out the way we have the kind of the steady releases of content versus like the game modes that are also very popular, and then also looking into things like account security, and seeing what's going on also with botting and rule breaking as well, and kind of seeing what we can do to kind of tackle those kind of fairly long running issues.
Okay, that all sounds good to the point where actually we do have questions about all of those things. Funnily enough, I've tried to pull out and we'll dive into those. But given that obviously you're new to the team, we don't expect a concrete answer for all of them. As well, to those in the chat, we might not be able to answer every single one to the point where we have a resolution we can tell you on stream now. But we know that you would like us to at least discuss them, so that's what we're going to do. Now, talking to something that's happened most recently, I guess, let's dig into it straight away. The GroupIronman poll. I'd love to hear everyone's opinion here in regards to the poll itself. And then also, if we could just kind of like dive into why was it so close to the release date that we put out, as well as then the voting habits that we've seen. I don't really necessarily want to call it spike voting, but there clearly were spikes of no votes as shown in the poll summary, and just the general kind of like voting habits as well.
Cool. Happy to talk to it first. Firstly, I think it's awesome that it was the most voted on poll in history. Whether or not we dig into things like spike voting and the reason for spikes in no votes, there's also the passion shown on both sides has been both enthralling, but then also gives you kind of cause for concern and worry about polling generally. But I know we'll talk to that a little bit later on. I think it's easy to dismiss people's votes as spite votes, when in actual fact, let's consider, we published the GroupIronman poll summary blog, so have a look at the website if you haven't already seen that. You can see the spike clearly around Deadman. I wouldn't necessarily call that spite, like a spite vote because of Deadman. I think there are very legitimate reasons for voting no, which is there was a tournament. Players had been spending a lot of time and effort, lots of passion, like blood, sweat, and tears, being ready to compete for an event, and then it was, taken away from them. Tons of people were watching the streams, watching their creators. Maybe their friends are trying to compete as well, and then they vote, and then because of what happened, that was kind of enough of an instigation to vote no. And I see some people saying, oh, that's the meaning of spite. I disagree. I think, you know what? People were trying to prove a point. I don't think in an ideal world, you should be making that point in an active poll, but then it's on us to respond to it a bit better and then give you more of a voice and an opportunity to express it. You know, I think clearly some players felt like the only place they had to voice their opinions and voice their concerns was in that poll, which I don't think either. I don't think it's true, or it shouldn't be the case if it is true. So I think that's one takeaway I'd like. And another takeaway would be because of that, you know, looking at polling generally. One thing I really don't want to do is knee-jerk into saying poll system needs to be changed as soon as possible. Poll system needs to be removed. Poll system needs to be whatever. I'd like, you know, seeing lots and lots of opinions from both sides. I think there are more than two sides as well, but both sides, both parties, yes and no. Lots of opinions. Let's spend some time talking to everybody, every type of account, every type of player, every type of, you know, cohort and demographic in the game, as well as internally, because we've got tons of opinions. Everyone's got tons of opinions. Let's just find out what people think. Big surveys. I think we want to work towards like another annual survey, and I think that should be a nice big section on polling, talking about polling, the poll, maybe a polling game, asking about polling. Now's, you know what? I think it's giving us a good opportunity to do this because it's now it's firmly in the front of players' minds that they want to try and get polling into a point where it works for everybody. Now, if I was a player, I feel that this is quite an exciting prospect because, you know, from my takeaway, I think what polling really needs is how do we give players more of a voice, not just on here's a question, do you want to vote yes or no, but here is the game you love. What should happen to the game you love? That's the kind of endpoint I'd like to get to. Bit of a tangent, but back to the question about the GroupIronman poll. Personally, you know, I don't say this when a poll is active because I don't want to be leading anyone. I'm quite pleased it passed. I think it's going to be really cool. I understand a lot of players' contention is around things like resource and dev time, but I don't necessarily think that is a point against GroupIronman. I think it's a point against our release cadence. And I know we're going to talk to that later on. It's on our, you know, agenda in our sheet to cover those types of things. But if you exclude release cadence, the type of content coming out, I think GroupIronman is very solid. So I'm pleased it passed. I'm really pleased that there's so many people voted. I like the fact that we use this as an opportunity to put out like a poll summary blog after the fact. I'd love to do that in more, maybe dig into the type of accounts, account age, his history, playing habits, levels, and that kind of stuff too. I've been waffling, so I'm going to stop that. So over to somebody else.
The point about how late GroupIronman's poll was, I mean, I think I've had my own thoughts on that. I think, well, the reason it was that late is a lot of the details about GroupIronman hadn't been fully finalized. You know, not necessarily do you want GroupIronman, but the other details about GroupIronman that were in the same poll, and that was kind of the holdback. Now, it's not ideal that we're polling GroupIronman a matter of weeks before release. You know, a lot of work's gone into it. It's a pretty unique case in that GroupIronman's built off clans. So, you know, the vast majority of the work's been done, you know, over the last couple of years, really. But I do think it speaks to more of the polling point generally, but we could have pulled do you want GroupIronman months ago and then asked about the finer details more recently, for example. Is potentially one way to approach it. The second point, I've seen a lot of community feedback on this also, and we've had our own thoughts as well, is polling, you know, game modes, things that aren't main. Now, the reason we did this is because of precedent, right? Iron Man was pulled previously, Hardcore Iron Man was pulled previously, and so we were following what was done in the past. But it certainly has started a conversation where maybe we can say, like, okay, stuff that's not the main game is fair game to handle differently. But I think it does, to a lot of stuff that Sween was saying, there's an awful lot here that we need to dive into, research to do with you, the community, and to understand where the problems that you all have with it and where you want to see it go next, while solving some of these issues too.
Okay, great. Thank you both for the answer. Sween, I think you said you were worried about waffling on, but your answer was actually completely based. I think the chat are a big fan of the way that you deliver. Thank you as well, Kieran. Is there anything you wanted to add, Marcos, or shall I move on to the next point?
Just generally, I think polling is, it's a key part of Old School and is part of the thing that makes it unique and makes we got a unique relationship with the community. I think the challenges, which the guys have already kind of alluded to, is how just need to make sure that it's fair for people from smaller bases of the community, so they're not. So we are able to keep releasing content for all different parts of the community without it being voted down. I think that's a challenge we face, and I don't know how we address that, but that's a challenge we need to look at.
Okay, great, thank you. I was going to ask what our thoughts were on polling generally, but I think we already covered that pretty much just following on from the question that I asked. So I'll just move into talking about Deadman now, because obviously that did have an impact on the GroupIronman poll. We can see that spike in no voters around about 2,500 or so. Not related to the actual poll itself now, but in terms of Deadman itself, what are we going to do about the finals? And outside of that, I guess the bigger question to be asking right now is, do you think that there's a future for Deadman going forward?
I think the big question, firstly, is what we do about the finals, because that's going to have an impact on the future of Deadman. I think we need to focus on the finals. In the statement we published, and I know lots of players are saying it's an announcement of an announcement, and yeah, it is, but would you prefer silence until we're ready to unveil, or can we have the opportunity to explain why it's going to take some time to come to the announcement? People saying redo finals. Yep, in the blog, that states that's exactly what we want to do. That is our most priority. Can we rerun the finals in an environment where the same stuff won't happen again? We identified content changes that we need to make. We identified some potential engine changes we'd like to make, and then there's also network infrastructural changes we'd like to make as well. Can all of those things happen? And if so, when? So I don't want to. We're not ready to talk about what we're going to do for the finals yet. We're going to try and rerun it, as we said in the blog. Just if I manage expectations, I wouldn't expect it in the very near short term. It's not going to be like next week or a matter of weeks, because, like I said, content ending, network changes, it needs to be. That needs to happen. I'd love for it to happen.
Yeah.
Really, everyone in this call pushing for it hard, and everyone understood that. Okay, let's try to work out what we need to do to make it happen. And then I think the success of that, the rerun, will then have an impact on the last part of your question, Isa. Do you think there's a future for Deadman? We love it. We spent so long saying to you, the community, we will bring back Deadman when we get the chance to do lots of cool content changes for it and do it justice, which is what we did. We were very experimental. I know some players think perhaps too experimental, bringing in sigils and the live system and bracketed wells and those types of things at once. But I think it was what Deadman really needed. It'd be a shame if we can't do it. Perhaps the question is, what does the end of Deadman look like? Because you got your couple of weeks, and some people said 3 weeks is too long. Perhaps you're right. Maybe it is just be like a 1 week or a 2 week thing. But then what does the end look like? Because there's a reason why most other major studios don't do online tournaments in the same way we do. Because you're going to get DDoS and stuff's going to happen regardless of your infrastructure in place. And we know what we do. I know players are I know lots of jokes about getting NordVPN and those types of stuff too, but we do spend a lot of time and resource and money on protecting our network and infrastructure. And that's always going to continue as well. But how can we de-incentivize it? Can we better structure ourselves and stuff? That's, again, more waffle, not real substance. That's pretty much the Sween forte.
But that's the reality of the situation. I mean, at least in the current format, the way we did the finale, the other day, we need to have more confidence that we aren't going to run into the same issues again before we can commit to it at a basic level. The last thing we want to do is run that event again and have the 2,000 players involved have a bad experience, let alone the 50,000, 60,000 viewers watching not having a good show to watch either, right? We need to make sure that we aren't going to have the same level of issues again. But DDoSing is a difficult issue to solve, so that's why we can't really put a cast iron guarantee around it right now.
Yeah. Once we are confident in what we can do and when that can be delivered, we'll let you know.
As for the longer term future, maybe with format changes as well, are also absolute options that we could experiment with. We could do the finale in a completely different way. Sorry, Aiza.
It's okay. It's fine. I was just going to say, well, thank you for the transparency, and hopefully those that listened to the actual conversation going on there are understanding at least that it's not just a simple case of rerunning it, because the worst thing to do would be to rerun and have the same problems happening again. And also to the point of like when, as much as it would be great if we could just, spin up the next Deadman and know that it wouldn't have any issues with the rerun next week, we've obviously now looking into the territory of Leagues 3, GroupIronman, both releasing both big pieces of content that I'm sure a lot of people want to get involved in, and taking them away from an early release as well probably isn't the best of ideas. So yeah, trying to fit that around content as well as those fixes is going to remain a priority. Now, whilst I'm on the topic of Deadman, which involves PvP, if I may, I'll just bring up the wilderness changes that have came up recently. Quite a sticking point within the PvP community. I touched on it towards the start when we said, this week's game update brought some of them, but not many at all. And this is an update that was planned in the roadmap for around about March time. We blogged it earlier on this year, and this is the first time really that anyone is hearing about those wilderness changes and the delay now that is incurred with them coming out. And I just wondered if we could potentially dig into that, why has the delay happened, and potentially what are we going to be doing about it going forward?
Well, I haven't been too close
At
to
the
the
end of the
project,
day.
so I'm afraid it's going to go to Kieran or Aiza to kind of go through it. I know you were quite close to the blog and the update going live on yesterday, Aiza.
I'll let Kieran.
Do you want to start by summarizing what was in there? I mean, do you want to start by summarizing what we've said already, Aiza? And then I'll expand, perhaps.
Sure. Yeah, of course I can. So in yesterday's Game Update news post, we basically touched on the fact that it has taken us much longer than we'd hoped to get around to the changes. And the truth is that, unfortunately, there was a huge but quite critical technical rework that needed to be done, which took out a developer off that project, the Wilderness Changes project, for multiple months. And I know that the team is a lot bigger now than it has been in the past, but the reality is the team are all working on different projects, some of them that you're still yet to hear about them, and maybe we'll be able to talk to them later on in this stream. But when we take out a developer from that, it's obviously a huge loss to resource. And then in addition to that, there's also been a lot of upcoming content that is coming out that we've had to reallocate resource to. And that's in support of, obviously, delivery, the quality, and our timelines. So ultimately, we were left in the position where the only option for us was to wait until that work was signed off before we could then resume anything wilderness related. I mean, at the end of the day, delaying content is something that all of us would rather avoid. But when we take into account the long-term health of the game, as well as the quality of content, like they have to be number one priority, right? There's no point rushing out a piece of content for it to then be substandard, for us to have to do multiple revisions of rework and such, or sacrifice doing these huge technical reworks, which hopefully we'll be able to talk about as well in the future, just to give a bit more understanding. But the good news is that rework is now in QA. All of the jobs from Pole 75 are now done, because that's something that has been going on for a long time as well. Pole 75 finished way earlier this year, but some of those jobs ended up being way more technically challenging than they were first scoped out to be. And rather than turn around and say we're not going to deliver them, we just took the time to make sure that they were done. But to be completely transparent, and as the blog says, it doesn't mean that we're out of the woods, so to speak, just yet. There's still a lot more work that needs to be done. We've still got a lot of content that's going to be coming up this year. So those updates aren't going to be something that will come out, within the very immediate future, the next few weeks or so, but they are being worked on. And in terms of like the future and what my understanding is, at least, of what we're going to be doing about them, Kieran, feel free to correct me when you chime in afterwards, is that we're now looking at going through and prioritizing the jobs in terms of their impact. And we'll start working on the most hard-hitting, high-impact changes first, and then slowly trickle them out over the course of however many months that we need to be able to get them out. But I guess the main thing from me is, as community manager, first and foremost, is genuinely sorry. I think all of us are in the team that these things have taken a lot longer than we wanted to. But also thank you for the patience that honestly a lot of you have actually shown us, and the understanding. It's never fun to have to turn around and say that, you know, something wilderness related has been delayed once again, because it seems to be something that always ends up getting delayed. But we are committed to putting those changes out and making sure that they're good. And we're still going through and changing them now and refining them based off feedback and stuff. So yeah, rest assured, we do want them to come out. We will get them out when we can. But yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, it's just say it's worth adding now that, you know, we're getting over this big bump with like GroupIronman, leagues, and Deadman that have been pretty major projects that have taken a lot of resource, with tight deadlines around them as well. So we want to get them out to a quality level that's going to please the players. So coming on the back of those, we should be able to get more, you know, more devs handling the. Am I getting abducted?
There's some interesting noises coming through from your background.
That might help.
Close the door to the aliens. That's going to work.
The aliens, I've locked them away. But yeah, we should get more resource on the wilderness stuff soon. I mean, our intention is to deliver on them, and to be honest, in general, we know we haven't done good enough by PvP players. Not just in terms of delivering, but, you know, there's the attached pull problems we've touched on earlier as well. And we want to make sure we do handle these, you know, and MMO's more than the sum of its parts, and PvP is a big part of that.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Let's completely switch away now from wilderness, GroupIronman, and that kind of stuff, and let's talk about something entirely different. And this one is about HD as well as third-party clients. If possible, can anyone talk more a little bit about the decision that was made, the reaction, and then as well our turnaround of events, so to speak?
Sure. So I'd say this is quite a tricky one to answer, not least for Mod Marcos on the call, because he just joined the old school team and has been spending the time kind of getting to grips with what actually happened. I think what's clear is that we made a big mistake in our approach to what we were doing. We didn't really explain what we were doing to players, and frankly, it was like a big. It's a crap decision. Let's be honest. We made a mistake. We did our best to rectify it, and this is not us celebrating it. Like, look at us, we did something right. Completely opposite. It shouldn't have happened in the first instance. In the future, I think we are committed to working better with third-party developers and players on these things, as well as making sure that everybody else internally, like the old school JMods and every other JMod, their opinions are heard as well to help inform approach before we go to a big public statement. Now, I'm pleased that we were able to reach the agreement we did. I am very pleased to have been playing with 117escape's plugin the last week. It's like very pleased to be able to use that. It's very cool. And I know, Mod Marcos, in the time you've been, let's not kind of talk to specifics of who and that, but I know you've been getting to grips and talking to some of our third-party developers as well, building that relationship nice and early.
Yeah, so I want to obviously kind of avoid kind of like previous issues that we've encountered and things. So one of the things I want to do is just have try and kind of have engender like a more positive approach towards those kind of things. And like you were saying, kind of reaching out more proactively and working with kind of third-party clients and plugins and stuff a bit earlier as well. So there's better communication and people generally know what's going on a bit more.
Okay, great. Thank you both. Appreciate it. There's a lot of questions about game content, but first, let's chat about some of the other issues which are, quite frankly, always on players' minds. I guess if we were to hit the first one off, I'll go through all of them so you can maybe mentally prepare for some responses. But what are our plans with things such as the dual arena, botting, real-world trade, and then finally account security? Maybe tackle them in order.
So it feels like it's been a long time since me, Kieran, were on the stream with Mike talking about the dual arena. And we really appreciate players' patience, and we understand the frustration in that not much has changed since then. So I think it's safe to say and to confirm that the dual arena will be removed in the long term, and it will be replaced with more engaging game content. But before we do that, we need to design the content, work with the players on what it could look like. And okay, look, I know lots of excitement in the chat, but big emphasis on the long term. This won't be happening anytime soon. Just want to manage that expectation. But we would like to be able to put some cool designs in front of you. Maybe midterm, nothing immediate. So short term, we want to make some changes to help tackle some of the issues that are involved with the dual arena. So one thing we're considering imposing is like a staking cap in the short term to mitigate some of those issues, to kind of tide us over until we're able to make that long-term change and long-term replacement. We'll be in a position to talk about that. I think we're kind of preparing that kind of thing. So we're looking at mid-October, but that can change. We are always flexible with our scheduling, but that's when we hope to be able to talk to you more about it. Dual Arena.
Okay, great. So in term, just to clarify, in case people skimmed over it or didn't realize, you mentioned about short-term imposing staking caps. Is there anything that you can kind of like delve into what exactly that would mean? Not actual values, but as a as a general player who likes to go and frequent the casino in the sand, how would that impact you?
You'd still be able to go and duel in the dual arena, but you wouldn't be able to perhaps stake as much at one time or over the course of multiple times. I think there's still more for us to flesh out, but I think let's not get into it too much of specifics. When I said like we want to be able to talk about it in mid-October, we do need the time to be able to actually properly, because there's going to be tons of questions right now. I understand that, but please be patient. We'll come back to you in that kind of time frame. We'll talk more about it then.
Okay, thank you. So on the next topic then, we had botting. If there's anything you can expand on botting.
This is kind of coming from other parties in the studio. So like with botting, we've been able to grow our anti-cheating team over the last 2 years or so. And we're going to continue doing that. We've been improving the technology they've got access to. We're going to continue doing that. And when it comes to what we're able to do and what we're going to be doing more of, we've been working a lot more closely with the kind of the player support and player experience teams just to be able to help relay a lot of player feedback. So, what should they do with this new resource and new technology they've got access to? Okay, we can help guide their focuses, looking at things like the high scores, looking at things like item prices, setting those kind of goals to adhere to, because we know that's really pressing on your mind. And that's not to say we've got it all right now. The team still needs way better tech than they got access to currently. But I think in the meantime, we'll be able to have some really good impacts, just being a lot more proactive in sharing what the players want to see focuses on from what they've got currently.
Okay, thank you. I guess something that leads on quite well from botting then is regarding real world trade and what we plan to do regarding that. I think there's some news that we can maybe share.
We do have a bit of news to share, yeah. So currently, we are very active when it comes to punishing gold sellers and the people providing the real world trading services. But going forward, we're going to be using like more of this resource and more tech, not just from the anti-cheating team, but from our analytics team and stuff, to be able to dedicate more resources and more tools to punishing gold buyers and buyers of real world trading services more actively. So that's going to be like a noted change. We'll be taking more action against the people purchasing services and purchasing gold. Now we're refining the processes, getting the tools in order. I know one of the things we really want to do is make sure there's like an appeals route so players can appeal should it come to that. But again, and I know I'm saying this a lot, we'll share more very soon. Yeah, we will. I mean, me and Aiza have been working on the comm schedules, and it's there.
It definitely has a place in there. Definitely looking forward to putting together all the comms that we've got coming out over the next few months. There's a lot of it. I'm definitely going to be kept busy. I just said definitely about 5 times in one sentence. So, for sure it's happening. To follow on from the real world trade part as well, actually, just one thing I know that will probably come alongside the comms that are going to go out in the near future. Those that play Deadman may have noticed that new report options were added into the game that didn't require people to have traded or chatted recently. One of the limitations of quite a few of the reports in game, and the There will be one going into the main game that will allow you to report other players as well for suspected, real world trade, gold buying as such, and that really is just an extension of our efforts to take action. Obviously, that's separate from what Sween mentioned, where we look at the actual tools that we have available to us, the tech as well as the analytics team, but giving you an option as well if you wanted to snitch, so to speak, on fellow gold buyers, then you'll be able to. If there's nothing else regarding real world trade, I'd like to tackle account security next, if I can.
Cool. Could I look to Mod Marcos for this one? Purely because when we spoke about account security and the blog we published, your reaction was, I remember helping to work on that blog. We haven't done anything we said then. So I think maybe quite a fitting way. I know it's something you're very keen to help sorted.
Yeah, I'm very keen to tackle this, obviously, because we want our players to be able to enjoy, a good level of security in their account, and it's people put hundreds or thousands of hours into the game, so we want to make sure their accounts are as secure as possible, like it's the right way to treat them. So obviously we posted a blog a couple of years ago. I think we maybe did recapture protection, but I don't know if much of the other stuff from the blog has actually gone live to date. So I'm going to be looking into that over the next few weeks as I kind of settle into the role. So this is something I want to kind of look into and kind of update the community on fairly soon.
Okay, great. I look forward to having an update on that. I'm sure that many of our players will be too. It's something that constantly gets brought up. So yeah, that will be really good. Okay, well, thank you everyone for the input on those discussions. Let's talk about game content instead, and maybe something a little bit exciting that will be the first time people will hear about. But first, I want to ask, what do you think about the sentiment of recent that we've been focusing too strongly on content that isn't permanent or new, or even just being put into the main game?
Firstly, on the parent stuff, I mean, we've done a lot of game mode stuff, right? Deadman. We're about to do GroupIronman, and obviously Leagues is following after that. And there's 2 points. They're probably too close together as well. But when I look forward, say 2022, 2023, the kind of right mix in my head is you have those 2 a year, right? You have a Deadman, you have a League, and those are your 2 game modes. This year is pretty unique in that we've got GroupIronman in the mix as well. Obviously, it's something we've wanted to do. But yeah, I mean, those are difficulties. We haven't got necessarily the balance right because we haven't had the right level of content going into the main game, especially even alongside that. So why not? Let's go straight into it. Drew, if you could bring up the image that was shared with you, if you've got it ready.
Oh Lord, it's happening!
Oh my gosh. What could it
People
mean?
might know what this is. So one thing we want to do is bring Nex into old school RuneScape. This is a very early prototype. The team's been looking at bringing it back into old school and getting the boss functioning. We had a little play of it earlier, and there's bits that still need ironing out and working on, but yeah, this is a screenshot from what the first port of the environment looks like in the game. So this is something we want to do and start and add some proper main game content into old school in the shorter term. Obviously, we did our summer summit. We're going to add some bigger things. Raids free. That's coming down the line. What can we do in the meantime? Next. And so we want to talk about this super soon because prototypes look really good. We've been experimenting with even the engine changes to support some of the stuff that Nex needs. And so what we want to do is actually bring a blog out about Nex in, I think, middle of October, Aiza, for that. So
it's loading up the
pressure.
schedule now. What have we got? So October, we're looking at a blog following. So October, obviously, right. So just be aware of what we're talking about. We recently had the Raids blog with Raids rewards and the beta. So first of all, we want to be able to put the revision of that blog based on the player feedback in players' hands first. So let's focus on the fact that we've announced Raids already. Let's get the revision of Raids rewards out. And then when it comes to Nex, and then specifically, more importantly, I think, looking at the chat, I see lots of excitement about Nex, but then also people saying, Torva, broken. Okay, we're going to change the rewards a bit too. So different rewards, not just a port of content, not a port of rewards. So in October, you'll be able to get your hands on the Raids free revision blog with the changes to rewards. You'll get your hand on the next blog with detailing the changes to the next rewards. And also we're going to be launching another beta world as well, where you'll be able to play with the changes to the Raids rewards as well as the next rewards at the same time.
Yeah, so you'll learn much more about that in the blog, where we'll go into a lot more detail. But I would say at short, this should be a next that works for old school, right? It's not just a copy paste of what was there in 2011, 2012. This is next for old school, with rewards that are suitable for old school and such. So, expect that in October. I'm pretty darn excited about it as somebody who played Next a lot back in the day myself. It's been really cool just to even see it in old school so far.
Before
that's
we move on,
one big thing. Sorry.
Yeah, so I see a few people in the chat that perhaps they stopped playing before Next was released. So they're asking, what is Next? Lots of people are excited, but let's not presume everyone knows what it is. So it was kind of like an addition to the God Wars dungeon in RuneScape. Well before RuneScape 3. This was kind of a RuneScape update. I want to say like 2011, top of my head. I didn't really look into it. So you obviously in the God Wars dungeon in old school, the frozen door is there already. There's a door, but there's nothing the other side of a door. What we're proposing is adding something to the other side of a door. It's Erosion General, really cool boss fight. It had really strong rewards, like a range set, mage set, melee set as well. We aren't going to be offering that as it was. It offered like a boost to HP and then later Constitution and then HP again when that changed back. So we're aware that a lot of the armor was OP perhaps, or doesn't fit old school. So we're going to make those necessary changes. If you're excited, that's awesome. If you're skeptical, that's fine too. I get it. The rewards were very strong. But I'd say when it comes to the blog, go at it with an open mind and then give us good feedback based on that.
Yeah, it's a group boss that'll be, largely it's focused around like six plus group size, although it's perfectly possible in lower groups. Balancing is something that's got a lot of work to do yet on it, but obviously we'll have all the concrete details in October. That's exciting. And to move on from that, another part about this focus on game content of being the temporary content, the game modes and whatnot. Another thing that's been highlighted really is the whole game economy issue, item prices being low on iconic items that you don't expect to see prices that low. That's a big thing. Well, we spent some time looking at what we've done. Jagex has actually brought in some game economy experts who are actually taking a look at not just old school but RuneScape as well to make some recommendations on actions we can take to put things in a better place. So one part of that might be this idea that I floated a few months ago on the stream. This idea of what if you had a GE tax, so a small tax, but imagine every transaction on the GE, a small amount of money is taken from it. I imagine Jagex makes this humongous pot of gold. You then, when you come and sell, say, your Abyssal Whip, we buy that from our pot of Jagex gold and delete the whip from the game. You still sell it and get your gold, but the whip's gone, and so we have an item sink that can work generally across the economy. So that's kind of the concept. There's a lot of complications to that, numbers-wise. How much do you tax? Do you target specific items? There's a lot of questions to answer, but that's kind of the core concept to try and tackle some of this, because I think we hear a lot of people talk about gold sinks, and I think that's having the right level of gold is good too, but item sinks are far harder, and that's really the aim. And I think most of the problems we're actually seeing is a lot of whips come into the game. There's a lot of people doing Slayer, for example, and they don't really go out. I mean, whips, you have the tentacle, but I'm using a bad example. I mean, the problem of dragon axes, for instance, they're worthless. And this should be something that can try and tackle that. We can make some
notes and buy them in advance.
Absolutely. So this is stuff. You're right. I just want to highlight. This is stuff that needs paying attention to. It's stuff we're starting exploration on, but we've got to really be careful and get these things right.
It's just cool. It's you know, when you mention the tax, I can see the chat where like, oh, I don't want to be taxed. And you know what? That's expected. Because even in real life, like look at what we did in the UK, the very slight increase to the national insurance tax. I think the consensus is, I don't want to be taxed. Go tax somebody else. Not my money. Take somebody else's money. And that's understandable. No one wants to have less money than they did. But I think once then you add the kind of addendum, which is we'll be using that money to remove items. And then when you go and do stuff like skilling, PVM or PvP, those items you get, you can sell for more. So it is a nice little system there. I hope. Socialist Sween. Yeah, maybe. I won't go into too much detail. But I hope, you know, again, hear us out. We're going to put it in blog form. We're going to go into too much detail because we're going to want to be able to change numbers and work with numbers as we see stuff. There's also some other fun things too. I hope no one minds me saying this, but you know, what if the gold sink, when we start implementing gold sinks, there was a literal gold sink for your player in house? How about that one?
Who wouldn't want a golden sink? Okay. I
The
didn't hear
ultimate
anyone
gold
say
sink.
no, so time to ship it. Cool. All right. Well, I think that was really interesting.
Like
yeah, they do. Some really interesting things being brought up there. Pretty exciting. Keen to see how that develops. Something else that we'll hopefully be talking to you about later on this year. Now, I just want to quickly take us back towards the seasonal game modes. And I guess the main question that I want to ask really is, why have we opted for 3 seasonal game modes to come out in quick succession? You know, and the main driving factor behind that question is that players seem to think that their enjoyment of GroupIronman or leagues will be impacted by the other.
It's a good question, and some of this, I wouldn't say it was planned this way. Some of the things have been kind of knock-on effects from things like delays in development. I think I'm trying to get the order right in my head. I think initially we wanted GroupIronman to come before Deadman, and then leagues to follow that. But because GroupIronman had some like engine dependency we want to resolve, we switched order. So this wasn't intentional. And then I think if we look at an ideal world, that doesn't happen. No way. Let's say, you know, let's assume Deadman happens again. Let's assume, you know, the finals wasn't what it was. Then and we're looking at the roadmap for next year. There should be a big gap between Deadman and leagues. I think, you know, it makes sense to have your Deadman in Q2, your leagues in Q4, or vice versa. And then GroupIronman is like I understand why we're grouping them together with the seasonal game modes, because it's not real main content, which we've just spoken about. GroupIronman's just always on, it's in the background. So I get the frustrations. I understand that now some people think they might have to prioritize one or the other. I know personally, I'm probably going to be AFKing my GroupIronman, play leagues while leagues is on, and then get back to the GroupIronman. But it's not an ideal scenario to be in. It is just
you best be. I need those resources.
Circumstance. I know. I mean, yeah, our team's going to be great. Me, you, Archie. It'll be fun.
Dream team. Let's go.
It's going to be awesome. The other thing I'd add is that these things we promised them to players this year. We don't want to not deliver on that. Not everybody wants to play leagues and GroupIronman. We don't want to do them a disservice at the same time, but we understand these issues, and the last thing we want to do next year is have these things clash. Right? We don't want to have Deadman going directly into a league straight afterwards and such like that. If not only that, there's a bit of burnout as well, and you want to get back to the main account sometimes too.
Yeah, I guess the main benefit really is that it gives us a real clear schedule ready for next year as well, right? We get everything out this year, and then we can focus entirely on 2022 with all the new exciting announcements that I'm sure we'll be bringing to the community in good time. Okay, I got one last question before we wrap things up. And that is regarding the old school team. Now, it's no secret that the team has grown hugely, especially recently, but there's an opinion within the community that the amount of content coming into the game is actually slowing down. or there's less of it. And I wondered if there's a way that we could maybe delve into why that might be, why that perception exists.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of factors involved, really. One, better production. The quality of what we're doing, higher graphics budget is better than it was. If you look at some of the content we released back in 2015, 2016, let's take the original launch of Zaire at the start of 2016, for instance. Yes, we pulled off a continent, but there were a lot of problems with it. The quality is nowhere near what we have now. The aliens are back. I'm so sorry. Can you hear? Are we good?
Yeah, we heard that. Okay,
right now.
Yeah, you're good
now. But yeah, the quality of what we're doing now is better. Now, quality is important. It's probably more important than quantity, just pushing out a ton of updates, especially for a game that's going to last. Indeed, it's our 8th year anniversary this year. We're going to be at 10 soon, 15 later, and 20 years, right? You can't just fill the game with a bunch of stuff non-stop. We've got to make sure it's good. Second to that, the team's grown a lot, especially in the last couple of years. That does take a lot of time to train new people onto the team and start getting all those people joining the team up to scratch too. What we feel like is that ultimately all this stuff will pay off in the long term. We'll be in a really strong place. But to the point about content, I think also feeds into this is we've been working on a lot of different other little bits. Something like the work that's gone into the enhanced client, for example. Like we've added a lot of features there. That takes some time from our team. We spent some time on the tutorial and things like that. That if you go back a few years, we weren't touching these things that I think are important to handle as well. So it's a matter of also getting our balance right between big things and small things. And I think we probably focused a lot on massive updates, which means you often maybe go a month or two without anything deemed significant.
It's all valid. I mean, we've been working on stuff, right? But the key thing is the player perception of the. Oh, we lost to Kieran. That's cool. The key thing is there's the player perception that they're not getting as much content to play, which I think is perfectly legitimate. Also, we might point to story points being higher than ever and be like, look, technically our spreadsheet says we're doing more. The aliens did get you, and they've returned you very quickly. Hopefully you're intact.
This is a replica, Kieran.
But sorry, where was I? The important thing is the player perception of the content coming through and the value they perceive. If they feel like they're getting less content, then let's consider the type of content we're making, the size of it, how often it comes out. If we think back to, I want to look at like maybe 2018, and I'm probably getting some of my dates wrong. Maybe some of the stuff came from the end of 2017 and start of it for 2019. But in really quick succession, we had like silver jewelry. We had reworks to 2 guilds. Fishing Guild and Mining Guild, I believe. That's when we introduced Amethyst. Obviously, Theatre of Blood, the Gargoyle bosses, probably tons of other stuff as well that I'm forgetting. Summer of 2017, we had the Inferno. January 2018, we had Dragon Slayer. January 2019, we had Kebos. There's tons of content, really like playable content. No game modes, no system changes. Also worth noting too that we weren't making really big under-the-hood systems changes. We weren't able to spend that time building clan systems. And whilst it's not exciting and it's just interfaces that you're looking at, it is a lot of work. But I think I'm going forward, now that we've laid a lot of the groundwork and building these systems out, I think it means then we're able to focus on delivering game content, the playable stuff that you're talking about. And it's also why after the Summer Summit, we saw your feedback about, this is really cool, I really want to play all of the stuff you spoke about, but where's the permanent stuff? Which is why the exploration into next, and then, all right, okay, how can we better preserve some of the stuff you're doing actively? What if the item prices made it worth rewarding? Where do you do any game economy stuff? So we are listening and trying to make those changes. Again, more ramble.
I think you're right. We need to work with the team to work out a a balanced schedule. So you've got a good kind of balance between smaller updates and bigger updates and game modes. It's important for the general health of the game to do that.
Well, hopefully a lot of the things you mentioned will just pay off in the long term, really, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some growing pains when you go from a team that's like 10 people and you don't really need to think too much about how you work together because it just happens. It's easy to have those conversations. The bigger the tier is, the more little conversations that have to happen between individuals in the team, and that also takes time to get right. Those are processes that we're working on to really nail them down as well. To not slow stuff down because of stuff like that.
And I don't want to point to remote working and stuff because I think people are sick of hearing it, but it is a legit reason for some things slowing. I think it takes time to how best to replicate the type of environment you have in the studio, the type of natural creativity and people bouncing ideas and stuff off people. That's why I started coming back into the office because I work better here. But I'm fortunate enough to live really close by. Not that I'm trying to dox myself, but it also means that even if you remove some of the slowdown from working remotely, and I bet there are tons of people in the chat who will say they work remotely and it's all fine. That's cool. But also consider that, the lockdown is because of a very serious virus that has had knock-on effects on people's health, and the people at Jagex, they're just like you in the sense that, I lost my lights. They're just like you in the sense that maybe they've had it themselves, or maybe their loved ones and their family and their friends have kind of also had it too. So it means that there's a lot of personal investment in what's going on into the people around them. I think it is quite easy. I know the quote I said ad hoc, off the cuff, on the 5-year video we did, where I said there are people under the JMod crowns or something like that. It is true. There are real people making the game, and then sometimes real life does interfere. But that's not the reason. It's just one of the reasons that we've been speaking about.
I think it was very well put. Thank you for that, Sween. That was the last question, at least, that I wanted to cover today. And given the fact that we ran over a little bit, there's a couple of chat questions that were pulled through, but we unfortunately don't have time for. So I'm going to quickly just scoot back over the announcements. For those of you that maybe missed the stream, we've gone over a multitude of different topics today. So if you have the opportunity, check back the VOD or wait till it's listed up on YouTube, where it'll be fully timestamped and you'll be able to see all the individual parts that we spoke about. But first and foremost, GroupIronman. The poll has now concluded, and we're delighted to announce that GroupIronman has passed. It will be coming to game on October the 6th. And we really look forward to you all getting ready to team up with your friends for a fantastic adventure through Gillinor. If you haven't already, check out the poll results summary blog to find out exactly how the results played out, all the info and more at GroupIronman. And then the next one is the Game Update, which brings you the start of the wilderness changes. We know that they've been highly anticipated. We've also seen all of the feedback around the changes feeling too slow. We covered a little bit about that earlier on in this stream, but we just want to assure you that there are more changes on their way, and we do sincerely apologize that this has taken longer than we had hoped for. Game Update for all of that information. And then last but not least, Leagues 3. Just about 2 hours ago, we actually released the rewards poll blog for Leagues, because it is in fact returning, and Shattered Relics is set to be the most open and versatile league yet, where you get the opportunity to master the new relic system, discover different powers, and tailor them to your playstyle. You can see all of the rewards that are on offer in the latest poll blog, which is at Leagues 3. That's everything from me. I've been your host, Mod Aiza. I just want to say a massive thank you to Mods Kieran, Sween, and Marcos for joining me today. Thank you to Mod Druid for helping out with production, as well as Mod Sani for helping out in the chat. And then lastly, an extended thank you to everyone at home who has watched. You've been an absolute joy this evening / afternoon or morning, wherever it may be in the world for you. Much appreciated. Have a fantastic evening. Enjoy your weekend. Happy scaping. And that is all we have time for. So farewell.
See you later.